Welcome back. This, of course, is K24 this morning, and it's all eyes, of course, on the BBI report. Now officially launched, no more speculation. So the question is, what does this report mean moving forward? There's now another date in January as we convene to discuss the report and see any amendments that need to be made. But even as we do that, we are looking back on the day that was in terms of the report and what it means actually moving forward. One utterance, and some of the utterances that are made there, this can be found actually on in the People Daily on page 2, where the President Uhuru Kenyatta was talking about sijui tangatanga kieleweke na warembo wa sijui hii camp na ile ingine. Please tuache hii yote and we build one Kenya. Sabina Chege also came out and said that they are going to dissolve their various camps and work as one. Did you buy that when they spoke like that? Or do you think that was said on the stage, but as they say, kwa ground, vitu ni different, and those camps will still remain, Millie?
I think, well, they may mean well, but even what they displayed there did not quite sit well with that particular statement. And I say this because I think it would have been a perfect day. Nobody expected many speeches. It was not the People's Day. It was the day of launching the report. And I think what people would have enjoyed listening to, and they did, was the journey that the President and Right Honorable had before this handshake. That was very interesting. Getting the young student from university to speak, perhaps getting a woman from Maendeleo ya Wanawake, which we may have controversies over it, but largely represents women in this country. Getting maybe the chairperson of the persons with disabilities to speak, that would have been it. Rather than bring in politicians whom we know have been divided, because the minute you call one, everybody assumes that you're calling this side of the divide. I think that messed it up. With the House leadership, I think it was good to call the House leadership, because at the end of the day, they'll have a role to play in ensuring that report is implemented. So they could have then called the House leadership and left out all the other politicians. Like any other woman in Kenya, I'm very proud of the women governors, the few that are there. And I'm glad that they called them. And the women governors who went there to speak tried to stay true to the agenda of bringing women to the front. Perhaps that could have been allowed, if at all. But I think that even with the governors, if they called the Council of Governors chair, it would have sufficed, because it would have reduced the political tensions and the talks that have been going on in the country. So we'll see going forward. As you've heard, Daktari has just said that there's been tweets by some of the leaders who spoke there already. So if less than 10 hours after the launch of the report, people are still tweeting in certain directions, it leaves us wary as Kenyans as to whether we'll get this opportunity to be able to actually talk about the economy and those ridiculous tax things that they were talking about in that report, and how we can improve it, and the enough brains in Kenya for us to be able to create tax initiatives that will increase people creating employment, that will then get the youth employed. I found it a bit odd, almost ridiculous, that you'd be talking about having tax havens for perhaps the youth who are not employed, don't pay. The most they can do is any law-abiding youth would be filing nil returns every year, nil returns, because they don't earn. So what you should be doing is creating havens for people who are going to create employment and set up industries in this country, so that then the youth can begin to earn, and then thereafter even accumulate money for them to be able to enjoy such havens that you're setting for them. So I think these are some of the things that we really need to talk about, so that I'm very glad to the extent that the issue of the executive has been toned down, because now our politicians will tone down. They now have to agree, both of them, because the Prime Minister position is there in whatever color that it has been painted, but it is there. So as they tone down on that, can we hype up the talk on what we need as the people to be able to move forward? We'll
be touching on that as well as we talk about what Mudavadi was really adamant on as far as his speech is concerned. But let's just switch it a bit and talk about the political angle of this. Dr. Khalwale, you've already spoken out that in terms of the roster of speakers that were given, clearly some speakers were sidelined, and Senator Murkomen brought that out. So let's talk about Jubilee from where you stand. As a member, not speaking for the party, but looking at the party from where you are, in the hustler's corner, is it still one? Are we now unified? Now that we have the report, can we walk as one as a ruling party? Is that the sense you get?
I am yet to go to any meeting convened by the party or an organ of the party. And from informal, and these days, because many leaders, I think, copying from Donald Trump, are starting to ignore the mainstream media. They are setting their agenda on their timelines. It looks like there is no controversy within Jubilee. Even the people who are speaking from the so-called Kieleweke and the ones from Tangatanga, they all are behind the initiative that was spearheaded by the president and the former prime minister. However, it's important that I say that yesterday it became clear that this was a presidential task force. And that being the case, yesterday's function was surely a state function. Those of us who have been around for a while, we know the protocol at state functions. There was no such a protocol yesterday. We would have expected that the governor of Nairobi, because he was the host, he would have been given an initial, not an afterthought, an initial first bite to invite everybody. Then we were expecting that Raila would speak, the president would speak, and the deputy president would speak, just in good time to invite the president to come and speak. That is protocol. Then we would have expected that the co-chairs of the BBI would have been given an opportunity to speak. But when you open it up the way they did, and in a bad way, the best person who was captured is the cartoonist in the People Daily. He's saying, thank you very much for this baby, but you forgot a very critical thing. You forgot to vaccinate the child. And the vaccine is against politicians. That virus called politicians. They failed it, and you will see. It is that failure that is now going to drive this process going forward. Because politicians will start saying, as you saw, and I hope nobody will feel uncomfortable with this, as you saw clearly, a politician called Joho come out, and he was given space. And even when Junaid started getting embarrassed that the guy was going overboard, he tried to stop him, but Joho said,
it had to rein him in.
I must say it. You saw clearly the former prime minister say that he doesn't trust parliament. He wants this process to go to the people. Now, when it is the former prime minister, who is the co-chair, shall I call him, with the president on the BBI, when he says that, you are now going on a trajectory that will make it difficult for us to build consensus. Which in effect, it means that if we are not very careful, it will end there.
We'll be jumping into why one faction, as we heard from a couple of speakers yesterday, were really adamant on taking this to the people by way of a popular initiative in terms of referendum, why they're pushing for that. But also, a remark that was made by the president yesterday when he was talking about the heated campaigns in Kibra. And it was a light moment, so it seemed, and he spoke about how it wasn't the people fighting, it was the politicians who are fighting, and they were hitting each other. Our Nairobi hospital. But if we actually interrogated what happened in Kibra, Dr. Khalwale, it wasn't the politicians. It was one-sided because we didn't see anybody from ANC, any independent candidate having to carry stones or hide or its hat taken. It was politicians squarely in his party who are on the receiving end, or so it seemed. We have the Didmas Barazas. We had you who had to carry stones to defend themselves. This coming from the party leader and it being made to seem like a joke. What do you make of that? Because I would assume when you are mending fences and building these bridges, that should have been spoken to in a much clearer tone from where he stands.
What the party leader of Jubilee was doing was that let bygones be bygones. And he was emphasizing the fact that because the future is greater than where we have come from, let us forget the past and focus on the future. The truth is violence is violence. Whether it is violence perpetuated by a leader or violence visited on a leader, it is violence. That the president chose that route, he was simply being reconciliatory. I mean, there are people, a lady called Beatrice, a young man called Dangan or Chanda, with the broken limbs and they are in plaster and whatnot, they are not leaders. There's a woman whose building was burned in Kibra. Those are not leaders. So the president has chosen the route of reconciliation. Let us go that route. Some of us who were being referred to, it was not a laughing matter. It was a real life confrontation. Right. If I had not intoned my other side of life, I would have been lying in a casket either now or then. So we will leave it at that. We want to move on. Let the people who visited that violence on Jubilee leadership hide their faces in shame. Right. That's it.
Okay, and of course, even as we talk about that, one issue that also came up was the body language that was displayed yesterday. And something that was of key focus as Building Bridges initiative was launched at a packed Bomas of Kenya. The country was also treated to an almost unnoticeable body language warfare between majority of the day's political speakers, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, Deputy President William Ruto, and the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Now, Shukri Wachu was there, and of course, with the help of a communications and body language expert, tried to decipher what really was going on that particular day. Let's take a look at this story.
This is shockingly messy. When I look at this, I see sort of like there was a plan in place to, make the DP feel left out. Actually, alone. All of these are handlers. All of, I assume, are handlers. People not at his caliber. He looks defeated. He's not, by the way, he's not defeated. He looks defeated. What for me, this state, as I was looking at this over and over again, I saw him, his body language weakened him, how he stood, he almost looks like you want to pity him. And that did not do him any favors. But look at that staring vacantly, staring in one distance. It was probably fashioned that way, whether deliberately or not. The way it looks, it was very, whoever was trying to be clumsy really did a good job at it, because this is clumsy. I don't even think the president acknowledges him. Look at the quality of his clap. He's stand away, then he does that, then he checks himself. Look at that, just look at that again. Look at where his hands are, then he claps very weakly, because we can't look at it in isolation. We need to look at it in the context of their relationship. These two have had a bromance, so to speak, but now there's a lot of, it's like a fighting couple. They're both very tense. Even the president is tense here. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga seems to have moved away from them and told them, okay, your problems, you deal with it, There was also the program, how he was listed in the program. It seemed that former Prime Minister Raila Odinga spoke just before the president, or at least one person before, or at least spoke after the Deputy President, and that does not happen. Protocol-wise, what I understand is that the Deputy President is the last person to speak just before the President, and is the one who invites the President.
Shida ambayo iko kwa serikali ya Jubilee hiyo watatatua kando yao. Sisi tuko ndani. Hiyo ni yao hiyo.
Look at the selection, and let me answer that question based on the selection of whoever they chose to MC this event. They chose the loosest canon they could find. Actually, there's the clip that's going around where the president is very amused, and President Ruto is, and Deputy President Ruto, is just cold, because Honorable Junet has talked about how they are not party to the problems in Jubilee, and the president just laughs. It would have been okay if they both laughed. That would have said, okay, we're together in this. But that he laughed, and Deputy President Ruto did not. That is what we saw. We saw the hostility, we saw the even resentment, I dare say, that has built up between these two. When Senator Murkomen comes in, it is like he now is the mouthpiece for the frustration of the Deputy President, because he spoke with a lot of emotion and completely now removed any doubt that these guys felt weakened, because there was a lot of booing, there was a lot of, and he got very, very emotional and stirred up.
In the history of our nation,
when he stood up to speak, in my view, when I was looking at it and when I was listening to him, I felt that he gained some power, then went on to actually speak, and spoke with a lot of clarity and spoke without stuttering throughout. For somebody who had gone through what he had gone through, that is a cap on his feather. That is a cap on his feather. It speaks to him as a very strong communicator. It also speaks to him as someone who's able to quickly gain, gain ground. It's also a critical moment for him, because how he handles this going forward will be very important. However, as much as I think he did well, I don't think that his team did him any favors. I think his team ought to have been prepared for this sort of thing, and they ought to have covered him so that he doesn't look weakened.
Well, there you have it, some of the issues that you had mentioned even before we went to that particular piece in terms of the breaches in protocol or what should have been observed, but also now looking a bit deeper into the body language of the various leaders on the podium. And one that really stuck out was, like we saw, and it's gone viral, when Junet Mohammed was actually calling on stage Senator Murkomen and spoke about those Jubilee problems, don't bring them here, you deal with them another day. And you go and look at the party leader and deputy party leader. They should either both have been laughing, finding it funny, but you could clearly see a disconnect. One found it really funny, and the other had nothing to be amused about in that particular piece. From the hustler's corner, again, I come to you, Dr. Khalwale. Are we still one ruling party moving forward? Because that picture spoke more than 1,000 words as to the current state of the party, even as we got the report.
To start with, where did Junet come from? Where in the structure of government did Junet find a place for a foothold to become the master of ceremony in a state function? They got it wrong right from the word go. 2, where do you find a situation whereby the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya invites Raia kama Khalwale to speak after him? The former prime minister, ni Raia. He's not an MCA all the way up to president. Even if we want to massage the egos of some of our leaders because of their history and the role they have played in this country, we should not do that with the message that we are entertaining impunity. That was impunity. There was a way in which Raila could have spoken after the deputy president, but not through protocol. Number 2, the issue of Junet making a light moment as he invited Murkomen. Why did he have a foreknowledge, a forethought that Murkomen was coming to speak to the issues of your problems in Jubilee? It removed the seriousness and decorum of that function yesterday in so doing, and you can see clearly when it amused the president, the deputy president was not amused. At all. At all. It is very clear. It should worry some people. And then finally, so that I allow my sister to contribute, the fact that you saw Raila almost running away from the president. He doesn't want to stand next to him. He was telling us that this is not what we agreed, Mr. President. What report is this that you're bringing here? This is not what we agreed. Let me stand away from you. That is not our report.
So you feel even in terms of the report, even he is displeased in what is in there?
And he said as much. Because the report says that there will be no referendum.
Right.
And then he says we must go back to the people for a referendum on his own report. And we said it. Somebody will revisit our tweets that came long before this function.
What happened at Bomas?
We said that if we are not careful with BBI, and we are working there, it is like your obstetrician telling you that your wife has finally gone into labor ward. And then because Mama has been looking forward to getting this baby, you have not mentioned to her, revealed to her that the radiologist who did an ultrasound, pelvic ultrasound, had confided in you that the child that she was going to the labor ward to deliver has no heartbeat. So she's very happy that she's found in labor ward. And therefore, you're wondering, the next thing she must ask you, go to Biashara Street and do shopping for the day.
Right. Quite an example and quite a picture to paint right there. Millie, I'll have you come in on this as well. This was for everyone to see in regards to what was going on.
Yes.
And I'll just jump all in terms of protocol and all that happened right there and probably say there was a mishap in communication. Let's give that to them. But at that particular moment of Junette's utterance and what transpired, as you could see, because the deputy president could have opted to, laugh and pretend that all is okay, but he didn't try and hide his feelings as far as that comment was concerned. What does this mean for the party leader and the deputy party leader as we await for this January convention for this report?
The good thing is that I have been listening to political analysts speak about this for quite some time. And one of the things that becomes apparent is that there's a game at play that very few people understand and know exactly what the end game is. And that, for me, becomes clear with what we saw there. I think that the question that Daktari has asked is very pertinent. How did Junette end up being there? The MC is very pertinent. But also goes to show that there's a lot at play that people don't understand. And generally, I think anyway, Junette did well. He did reasonably well. He was humorous. He was calm. He tried to call people. He may have made some blunders, which he did and which we have acknowledged. But generally, he did reasonably well. I think that when you look at that body language between the two leaders, and we look at the elephant in the room, which is the PM position that is supposed to be created, I have more questions than answers. Therefore, I would not be very useful commenting on that. I have more questions than answers because I feel that there's a lot at play that nobody understands other than the key players. But going back to what I can comment about, that I think I do know, I think that the role of the PM is something that is unlikely to happen at the end of the day, at least not before we go to the 2022 elections. And that should be of concern to anybody who wants to come in the 2022 elections as a presidential candidate. And I say this because remember that it was going to give Kenya an opportunity to be able to have what we've seen before, what we saw in 2002 with NAC coming into force, when people see a team that you're able to display that shows that you're bringing people, a large part of the country to the fore. It also gave Pentagon a foot to stand on. And it also gave, I think, to a small extent, in 2013, gave Jubilee a foot to stand on, but they were saying that these are two communities in Kenya coming together, and you can align behind these communities and come to the front. And we know that very few communities will be left out if you're not behind these communities. So that's showing people that you're bringing in more people, gives people an opportunity to have a calmer elections where we'll enjoy the politics and have less of the violence. So that is a loss. I think it would be a loss for Kenyans if we don't have that brought into the fore, because our politics will still be as heated as possible as in the past. Then just as I finish, the fear we have of creating a monster president and going back to the kind of presidency we had under the old constitution is apparent each day. Remember that even things we had like the security sector, and I see the thing touches on security, it doesn't talk about appointment of some of the security organs which were removed from independent bodies like we had in the past, brought back to the president. Appointment of independent officers and commissions brought back to the president. And now we see a president who is also being asked to appoint a prime minister. So he's becoming bigger and bigger in size, and is going back into the monster that we did not want when we were dealing with the constitutional review process. And I think that's something that Kenyans must talk about in the January conference. So if we cannot have a prime minister position that is meaningful, I don't think that we need it
in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take very quickly before we take our break.
Yes, very quickly, the issue she has raised, I did not want to speak on the point of prime minister. But I read on the report in respect of prime minister, and I say, my goodness, if I was in ODM, I would be very angry. If I was Raila, I would kill somebody. You know why?
Why is that?
The report says the prime minister will be appointed by the president. Let's assume the president is Ruto. So Ruto will appoint Raila.
Right.
Number two, that prime minister, The report does not say who will be the leader of the majority party. The report says will be a member of parliament.
Be picked from the National Assembly.
Yes.
Any member of parliament.
Right.
So if, for argument's sake, and this is purely theoretical, if for argument's sake it is Ruto appointing from ODM, which is most unlikely, there's no way ODM can have a majority in that house, unless of course they go into a coalition. If it is Ruto appointing, it means Raila will first of all have to go to Kibra and square off in Kibra
To get a parliamentary
with
seat.
MacDonald Mariga to become an MP. Of course, he'll tell Imran Okoth not to stand. So he squares off with Mariga.
Right.
Assuming he beats Mariga, he will then come to Parliament and beg Ruto that when you'll be choosing the leader from ODM, I'm now in Parliament, please present my name. Because he can still win. He comes, and Ruto says, okay, you are a member of Parliament, but I am not going to settle on you. I'm going to pick Junet.
Right.
And Junet will gladly want to be the Prime Minister of the Kenya,
right.
and Raila will be left there. So I can tell you, the way it is now, it hasn't given much to ODM.
Okay.
They asked for it,
And
they got it.
We'll take a short break on this particular point in time. When you come back, we're going to talk about the economy, the economy that should have been addressed right in there. And also a push by some of the speakers for it to take the referendum route. We've seen Honorable Gladys Lwanga tweeting severally that this is the way that it should go. And several speakers of the day yesterday. Why that particular push? We discuss that after the break.